Everybody, this is Anne. Today I wanted to go over unique fabrics within Substance Painter. A couple things before we get started here. The first thing is I wanted to give a huge thank you to Pandy Girl for allowing me to use her D-Force Divine Drapes for Genesis 8 females as my little test subject or test case here. I will be using this one right here to texture. So I just wanted to give a huge thank you to her. So without further ado, let's get into actual Substance Painter here. On right off the bat, I want to point out that this isn't going to be a how to use Substance Painter from beginning to end type tutorial. I'm not going to spend necessarily time going through setting up the application or where what exactly is. This is more specifically going to be about how to use this pack within Painter. If people are interested in me possibly doing a tutorial on Substance Painter at a later date, I might look into that, or maybe doing one and putting it in the store or something. But this one isn't that. This is more of just a, what can you do with unique fabrics. Another thing that I wanted to point out is that obviously Substance Painter is not the only application that you could use these in. I had somebody ask me earlier about like Filter Forge, which I'm pretty sure you can use some of the pieces within that app. Obviously you could take it into apps like ZBrush, you could take it into Modo, you could take it into Body Paint, you could take it into Mudbox, you could take it into Blender, any app that will allow you to bring tiled textures in, basically. You could use it within that app. I also want to point out that with applications like Photoshop, that on my version of Photoshop, which is CS6, they were just newly starting to kind of implement some of the 3D stuff. I don't know what the later versions are like because I don't have the newest one. But in general, it will probably be easier to use the tiles in programs like Substance Painter or like Body Paint and the similar, rather than using them in programs kind of similar to Photoshop. That said, even though it'll be easier using it in the other apps, I did have a friend of mine test within Photoshop. She said that she got them to work fine and was able to manage and use them and liked them within her app of choice, which happened to be Photoshop. So they are usable. I would suggest bringing in the stuff and saving them out as tiling patterns and possibly using them that way. If you're using an app other than Substance Painter and you have any questions on how to do something with the tiles, please let me know. I can't say that I can answer every question for every app because I don't own them all, but I will try my best to get the answers, or I will try my best to answer. The next thing that I wanted to go over here is that, as you can see here, I've already got kind of a pre-made scene going. So I already imported in the model. I have already spun out and baked maps for it. I have also created some layers over here already. So I'm just going to go over kind of what I pre-did. And some of this I did just because some of it's a process and I just didn't want to have you sit there and like watch me draw. So basically what I did was just added a fill layer at the base here and just turned it black and turned the roughness all the way up and turned everything else pretty much down except for opacities all the way up. Next layer up, I have a folder that has a mask on it that is restricting everything within that folder to the area that you see that is white here or white here, depending on where you. So this specific folder, anything that I put in it is only going to apply itself to all these white areas, and it's going to ignore all the areas that I have blocked out in black. Um, the next layer is the actual direct opposite. Everything that is in this folder is targeting only the black areas, so only the trim areas. So it's basically these two masks are inverses of each other. Um, so this is my trim. The next folder up, I just took the curvature map, which was spun out over here, right here, and took it from the project here and just drag and dropped it and put it on a fill layer and put it to multiply, I do believe. I was on the wrong thing here. Come on, go back to base color. And set it to multiply and then blurred it and added some levels just to give it a little bit of depth within the viewport here. That said, since this particular cloth is dynamic, and since where the wrinkles are and where the depth is will change based on the pose and how it's laying and stuff like that, I wouldn't advise burning in this stuff like that. So I might use this to kind of get a feel for the piece itself, but I wouldn't necessarily leave this on like when I exported the textures or something in this specific case. And then the very last layer here is the stitching. So as you can see, I put some stitching on here. Now obviously you're going to see, like here, let me move in and show sloppy work. Obviously this isn't the sweetest and nicest of lines, neither is the trim. Since I'm not necessarily doing this texture for sale or something, I just kind of did a quick kind of block out on it. So excuse my sloppiness, this is not my normal work, this is just, you know, I just wanted kind of it to look like a general shirt when we started here. So now that I've gone over all of that, why don't we go ahead and get into some of the parts of the pack. So the very first thing worth pointing out is that to find the textures, you just need to go to Runtime, Textures, ARTCollab, Unique Fabrics. Within that folder, you are going to find all of the different fabrics, all in their own individual folders. I did it that way so that people could find the files for each pattern without any problem. I also want to point out here, let's pop this up for a minute, that if you go to this promo right here on my product page, you can download that and use it somewhat as a key. So while I didn't put the names on all of this, so I didn't put like, you know, this is this pattern and this is that pattern. What I did do was lay these out in the order that they are. So, in this case, this pattern right here is beaded 01, this one is beaded 02, this is beaded 03, this is flower 01, flower 02, and so on and so forth all the way down to peacock down here. So if you want kind of a guide, you can use this as your guide. You could probably save this and kind of put it in here just for reference. But so like if you decide, oh, I think I want to use this pattern, what pattern is it? Well, I can either start from peacock and go backwards, like I can see 12. So 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7. So this one is probably going to be pattern 7 if I did this right. And ta-da, it is. I didn't put the names on this just because I felt that it got too cluttered and it actually made it more confusing. So, but they are all in order, so you can use this as a little guide as far as that is concerned. I also want to point out that this promo right here may also be useful to save in here. And basically what I'm going to use is beaded 02. So I'm going to go into that folder. This promo has like a little key to my naming conventions. If I open up the maximum size here and kind of scroll it up, you'll see it'll say like base color. Those ones are usually evident because they have the colors on them, except for the white ones and maybe the black ones. And I guess if I did a gray, they kind of blend in too. But they usually say like gray or BLK for black or WH for white. So you should be able to tell what's a base color or diffuse map and what's a one of the other maps. The way I did it is the metallicity maps are underscore M. The height maps are going to be underscore H, and while the arrow is in front of it, roughness maps are underscore R, normal maps are underscore N, masks are underscore MSK, and then a number, and then trans maps are underscore TR, and then a number, or alpha maps. So if I come over here, you're going to see, okay, there is metallicity, that one is a normal, these three are masks, that right there is the roughness map, these 6 are all trans maps, and if you think you won't be able to remember kind of how I named it, because I know everybody has their own naming conventions, then as I said, I would download this just so you kind of have the key maybe in this main folder. If I was thinking maybe I should have just put them in there, but at the time when I zipped this all up, I didn't have this promo yet. I decided to do it kind of after the fact, so I should have thought of it and put it in after, but I uploaded it and then thought that would be handy. Oops. Anyway, another note is that the underscore AO maps, which you'll see they're not listed here, they are not actually even set up in DS at all. They're only in the folders. These maps were generated by kind of software. They do in some cases have some seams. So if you decide to use these AOs, you may actually need to slightly deseam them. I wanted to point that out. The other maps, to the best of my knowledge and from what I've tested and retested, everything else should be seamless. Not that I'm not human and can't make a mistake, but as far as I could obviously tell, everything is seamless. But these AO maps are not. I put them in because I thought that some people may want to use them or they may come in handy for certain things that I wasn't considering. And since I had it, I put it in, but I did want to kind of add the caveat so that you know that you need to look at those a little more closely. Other than that, I think that goes over everything I wanted to kind of say about the files in general. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and get started here. So first, we're going to kind of pull in some of the maps that I want to use. So maybe I will grab like this black texture, I'll grab the height, the metallicity, I'm going to grab all of the masks, the normal, the roughness, might grab like this red color one here, and I think we're going to go ahead and grab all of the trans maps. So now what we're going to do is we're going to pull all of those in and we're going to drag and drop them down onto the shelf. And you can see right there above me, above my thing here, it says shelf. You just drag and then drop. And the next thing you're going to get is an import resources screen. You can select the top one. You can technically bring in tons at one time. You select the top one, hold shift, and click the bottom one, and it's going to select them all. I generally put a prefix in for all my stuff that I'm bringing in. So I generally put ARTCollab, and then you're going to switch this to texture. Now I will say some things like the masks, you could bring those in as alphas to use on brushes or other things. It's kind of just, trust me, you can creatively use all kinds of things. But for this, I'm just concerned with using them as textures, so we're just going to bring them in that way. And then from there where it says import your resources to, you can pick current session, project video, well, project, which in my case is Video Divine Drapes, or shelf. Most of the time I generally use these two unless I'm just experimenting. Then I might use current session. Current session just kind of ditches the files after and it's kind of, they're just gone and they're not on the shelf at all. Project means it's going to save it on the shelf, but only in that specific project or project file. And then shelf means that they're going to be there for any project. So everything I open in here, they'd be there. In general, I would say bring them in under project and then actually save out a material ball for them and use them in other projects that way, which I'm going to show you how to do, just for those that may not know. But so I'm going to go ahead and select project, import them in, and now we're going to see them all imported in here. You'll see that it automatically filters and it'll say import if for some reason you click somewhere and you lose that. Because we brought them in under project, you can just select project and they're all just right there. If for some reason you didn't bring them in as project, then they're going to be under textures and you might have just gobs and gobs. I have tons of stuff in here, in which case then you want to type in the name of the base files. So in this case they were art beaded, not needed, I don't know what I'm typing, stop that, beaded 02, and now I'm going to be able to bring them up. I just wanted to point out just so you don't lose them. But so I'm going to go from project because that's a nice, it's only having me deal with what I just kind of brought in. So from here what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over to this base where I said it's targeting just kind of the cloth areas or just the main areas, and I'm going to open up that folder and you're going to see I made another fill layer that just says texture. It has everything on: color, height, rough, middle, opacity, normal, and emissive. And for those curious, I am using this PBR metal rough with alpha blending thing. It says outdated. I keep trying to update it. It keeps not doing it. I don't know why, but it hasn't caused me any problems, so I just leave it to be. But obviously you can use, you know, others of these. Let's see. It's that one right there that I'm using. Just keep saying outdated. But anyways, so from here we're going to scroll down under properties for the fill layer. And you're going to see it's going to be asking for different maps. So we're going to pick which map we want to be the base color. Let's see, do I want to play with the black one or do I want to play with the red one? I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in the black one as my base color. So now that's applying on there, and you may or may not be able to see that very well, so I'll zoom in a little bit. Then the next map it's asking for is height, which conveniently is right next to that. So I'll drop that in. Now you can see we're getting a little bit of depth to the piece. The next map it is asking for is roughness, which also happens to be, oh nope, roughness is down here. It's kind of an alphabetical, so roughness is here, so we're going to drag that on. That's going to put this on here, and you can see it's starting to slowly pull together here. The next map is going to be the metallic, which is right here. So we're going to pull that on. So you just drag and then drop. Okay, so that's on there. Then the next one is going to be opacity, which for right now I'm not gonna add. Usually you want to play with opacities at the end, just because it can be hard to see once you get opacity going within Substance Painter, like within this window. And then the next thing I'm going to do is drag on the normals. So now those are there. And then that is going to be it. Now, as you can see, we've got everything loaded up here. So we've got basically the black base on. From here, if I decide maybe I don't want to use the black base, you can go and click on one of the other color choices, like base colors that you decided to bring in, and just drag and drop and replace the base color, and now you've got the red one on. And in this case we're going to keep the red one. I just wanted to show, like, if you want to try out the different ones, you just keep dragging it over to base color. Okay, so from here the very next thing that I would advise doing is we have everything loaded up. We've decided not to add the opacity for right now, and we don't need emissives for right now. So we just have our nice little material going. And since we have this all in here, what I advise doing is anywhere around any of these blank spaces. Just watch you don't get too close to any of this stuff or like this. But any of these blank spaces, anywhere in this whole pane, you can right click and do create material preset. Now you're going to see over here, I have this nice new pretty material ball for this. If you right click on that, you can rename it. So I can name it Art Beaded 02. And now it's going to be in here. So if I search, because I've got a bunch of junk in here, Art Beaded, there it is. Now the way this benefits us is from now on, say I go into another project and I'm working on a dress now. And maybe I want to experiment with this. Instead of having to go through this whole process of dragging and dropping all the stuff and then pulling it all over here, now all I have to do is just add a fill layer. We'll turn this off for a minute and just click this ball and boom. So basically we have the exact same thing we just had. So that's step one. So we're all good there. We're going to switch this back to project here. So, okay, we have gotten you this far. Hopefully I'm not going too fast and this hasn't been, wait, what are you doing? As I said, if you have any questions about any part of this process, please let me know. From here, what you probably want to do is kind of play with scale. Now, it could be that you like it in this full scale that it's in when it comes in. I played with the extra large scale a bunch of times with a bunch of outfits, and I actually kind of really liked it. I liked kind of the couture look. I can't say the word. Hopefully you know what the word was I'm trying to say. Couture? I feel like that's a difficult word, or I'm just having a bad morning. Anyways, I kind of liked the overall look that having the pattern on these large kind of gave, because it was kind of unique and different. That said, though, obviously large scale doesn't work for everything. In some cases, like the lining and the stitching looks too big or it looks kind of awkward. That said, though, you do have to consider how things look from a distance, and from if you think that the clothing is going to be rendered from further away, sometimes the larger actually looks better even though up close it looks unnatural, which is kind of confusing. But it makes it so that it still has some details even from a distance, which a lot of times the smaller and more precise and actually more accurate, sadly, that the stuff is, like if it's the real size that the real weave would be, you lose all of that detail the second you kind of pull back from the piece. It's only great if you're like way up there. So sometimes there's a reason to have it big. That said, in this particular case, what we're going to do is we're going to play around with the scale here a little bit. So the first thing I want to point out is the projection. Obviously there's a bunch. There's UV, triplanar, planar, spherical. For clothing, most of the time, I personally use UV projection. Mostly because most of the clothing people are really good about doing flat mapping. They are also generally pretty decent about putting in the seams on the natural clothing seams. So they put the seams in the UVs on the places in the model where real seams would be for that article of clothes, if that makes sense. So in general, I tend to just use UV projection. Using triplanar on, say, something like this is going to give you some very crazy and odd results. You're going to see how stuff's kind of overlapping on itself here. So you've got like where this is projecting over. What it's trying to do is get rid of seams and give the illusion of kind of being seamless. But when you're dealing with patterns like this, it tends to just add strange artifacting. So that's not normally very useful. It's useful for a lot of stuff, just not necessarily for this. So for all intent and purpose, we're going to use UV projection. Obviously, depending on the clothing you're using, play around with all of them, see which works best. From here, obviously, we could scale this way back, and now, you know, the piece is going to look like this, and maybe that's how we want to use it. Um, a lot of the patterns have very distinct looks at different scales. I tried to make them detailed to the point where, you know, it kind of had something whether you were far away or close up. So obviously we could pull way back and you're going to get one look. Actually, you can get a few different looks this way because there's enough color variation that it does still have like a very pretty, kind of almost like expensive fabric look to it. And then the closer you get more details and more patterning and stuff like that. In this case, I am going to use this at like 2. So I'm going to use it very large. In general, the uh, the textures were done at a scale of 4. So I was expecting 4 to kind of be the default scale. But obviously it doesn't need to be. And like in this case, this does look about right for this fabric at this distance. So I actually like this at 2 on this particular piece. But so we're going to play with this at 2. The first thing we can do is we could try moving this around, see if we like the pattern laying in a different way on this. So when we're on here, we could go, okay, you know, let's see how I like this pattern depending on where the pieces kind of lay. So if it's not open, you want to click on Show Hide Manipulator. That's going to bring that over here. And then from here, you can kind of pull and push this around and go, okay, you know, I kind of like these details here. I want it going up and down, or I want it at an angle. I want the swirls more in XYZ place. So you can kind of tailor what you want to do. And I find that zooming in and kind of being able to see here, like I can wrap this around, maybe pull this down, and maybe I want like these to line up with this color. Now, the benefit of doing this is technically you can add masking and you can mask out some of the rest of the pattern and literally make it so that, you know, just that part of this pattern is being used. Maybe you only want these lines and these circles and you don't want the rest of this. But so you can kind of just play with how the stuff is laying until you get it in a spot that you like it. In my case, let me go back to where I was because I was just kind of, I'm in a Control Z, just kind of showing you can whizzle it all over the place. Okay, we're back to where we were. And in my case, what I might do, I actually like these swirls kind of right here. I don't know why. And I kind of like the way these swirls end up at the collar right here. So that is where I am going to choose to place this. Now if I click off of this layer and back on, just because it's being a little slow because I'm recording and doing this at the same time, what you're going to see is that it shows you an offset. So it's giving you the offset of this on, what would it be, Y and X, I think, or yeah, Y and X, I believe. It's giving you numbers for the offset. That's going to be important later. So the next thing I want to do here is I'm going to add another fill layer. Now from here, as you can see, it just kind of turned everything white now. And if I turned off everything down here, so opacity, normal, height, roughness, emissive, metal, I now have a white sweater using this texture. And that took like all of 5 seconds, and ta-da. And technically, you know, you could get tons of solid colored versions of this really quick just this way. I mean, just kind of fiddling with the colors. How about we go a little brighter so we can see, shall we? But so if you're looking for just like a single color patterned, you could stop here once you get the scale and stuff the way you want. But in this specific case, we're going to take this back to white. We're just going to go straight on white, white. Very, very bright. And then what I want to do is I want to add a mask to this layer, and I want to add one of the masks from this particular pattern. So I can either right click here and do add bitmap mask, which means you're going to use an image for the masking, or I can come up here and do add mask, add bitmap mask. And from there, I'm going to type in ARTCollaborations 02. And now I've got all my maps here for me. And I want to pick one of these masks to bring in. Now in my case, I don't think I want to do this one. I think I'm going to stick to this one, like the smaller details. Now you're going to notice when I bring that in, it's adding white onto that shape on this piece. Now, obviously it's not lining up with the pattern. The reason it is not lining up is because the mask itself is being brought in at a scale of 1 at 0. So, you know, right here is its center. This, though, as you recall, we changed the scale to 2 and we moved it. So what we have to do is put these settings on this fill layer so that they match. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to change this to the 2. And then the next thing we're going to do is come to this layer and just grab the texture coordinates. So copy, come up here, paste it to this offset. Come back down here, right click, copy. You can also do, obviously it even tells you X, C, or V. So I think I'll do control paste this time and just do control V and put that in there, and now we are all lined up. So now what we have done is we have targeted this specific part, or these specific parts of this pattern. So from here now I could, you know, add different colors in. I could go with completely different colors. So we could have this be red and blue and whatever. I could kind of do whatever I want with this. As a matter of fact, I could start playing with the roughness on this. So I can make this more metallic, like I just kind of did when I turned that on. I can make it kind of matte if I wanted, because obviously, like, I added a lot of metallicity to my textures. I wanted them to be kind of like fancy clothing textures, like I guess is the word, like dress clothes, dressy clothes. But if you need it to be more, if you need them to be more muted in tone or want a more flat pattern, then you can do that just by turning up the roughness on these. You could then add in the metallicity channel and make sure that the metallicity is all the way down, and now what you're going to get is just flat color. So just this color, no shininess and all that. I would say generally for regular fabric you want the roughness to be right around, like, say 7.5, because fabric does normally have at least a teensy weensy little bit of sheen, maybe even up to, like, say 8.5, but I wouldn't technically go all the way to 1. But so obviously now, just with that one change, and here I'm going to name this mask 2 since that's what it was, and we're going to make a folder here. We're just going to call it new colors. New colors, because I'm going to do more than one. Okay, now I just messed that all up because I can't type colors. There we go. And we're just going to drag and drop this in here. So now obviously we've gone from this to this. Now from here, what we can do is replicate this layer, and the reason I'm going to do that is because we already took the time to put all these settings on this one. So from here on out, to save us time, we're just going to kind of duplicate that, and then we can just swap out the texture we're using. So in this case, I'm going to come into this layer, go back into here. Come on. And I'm just going to type art beaded O2 again to pop those up. I don't really have to do O2, but, and this time I'm going to grab mask 1. And I'm going to call it mask 1, mask 1. Now you're going to notice that they are kind of grabbing different areas of this texture. I can come in here and now I can say, okay, you know what, I want a third color here. So maybe, let's see what I think looks pretty but not ridiculous. I don't know yet. I kind of feel like the ones that were kind of orangey-ish up in here were kind of pretty. We'll say maybe I go with a color like that. So now we've taken this from here to here just by changing a few things. Obviously, maybe we want this piece to actually have some metallicity, so we could turn up metallicity a little bit there. We could turn this back this way. Now you are going to notice there's going to be kind of a slight little tiny rim here that happens because of the way that the normals and kind of the displacement and stuff is kind of pushing the fabric. And the masks are a little leaner than what the fabrics ended up being. There are ways to resolve that. You can come in and you can add a filter bevel, I believe is the one I want. Then from here you can see now I'm pulling that in. So if you wanted to kind of fade to a color, this would be one way to do it. You could use the mask to kind of combine two colors together on one element. So if I change this to kind of more goldeny tone here, I could make it so that the centers were kind of brighter on this and then they fade outward kind of to the golden, if that makes sense. And the reason it's doing that right now, the reason it pulled it in is because this is beveling at a negative right now. So if I switch that to the positive, now it's going to go way outside of the pattern. So now we need to just kind of tweak and hand tune until we get it to where we want. Which I don't feel like the number was real high. It was like 0075 or something, and it pretty well covers over everything. But so there you go. Now what I've got going is kind of a silver, blue, red sweater. From here, I could come in and I could add just a fill layer on top of all this and turn all of this stuff off. Now I've got a blue and white sweater. If I change this base color and darken it up, now you see I've got this really pretty kind of black, silver, and blue sweater going. So as you can see, you can use the masks pretty easily and pretty quickly to customize and change things. And in this case, I'm going to actually put this in this folder too. Okay, so what I want to do here is I am going to be duplicating some things. So I'm going to duplicate this whole new colors folder. And we're going to turn this one off. And I'm Going to call this one, let's see, new idea. That's what we're going to call it. And from there, I'm going to delete out this fill layer that caused the whole bottom to be black. I am also going to duplicate this layer, and I'm going to move it up here. We're just going to pretend that these don't exist anymore. On this new layer, what we're going to do is we are going to turn off everything but the height. So we're just leaving the height on, turning everything else off. And for right now, I'm going to get rid of this. I'm going to add a new layer above this. And we're going to name it that because I think it's clever. So from here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to search for a metal. So I'm going to go for, I think, gold. And I'm going to kind of scroll down here. And I am going to pick, I think, one of these gold leaves. It's going to look a little strange, but for what I want, I think I'll use this one. Okay. So now, if I kind of make this smaller, there we go. As you could see pretty quickly, what I've done is now I've got my pattern, but it is actually on gold. Now, obviously, on this particular clothing item, that looks a little strange. On the other hand, though, you can see how you could actually use the heights or masking. Like, we could do this another way. I could turn off this layer. So now we've just got flat gold going here. We're going to turn on these where I had the masks. And what I could do is say, like, mask 1, I could turn the color off and the roughness off and the metal off. And I could turn the height on, scroll down here and turn this up. Now you're going to see I'm bringing forward just the height of that mask. And you can see how pretty easily you could use it to be decorative elements on, say, like armor. You could use it to, like, somehow decorate weaponry. Obviously, you could use stuff like this on kind of just about anything. Obviously, we'd probably want to add a couple things, like we might want to add a filter and add blur to it a little bit. Maybe not that much, that's a little too high, but to kind of soften the edge up a little bit there. Add a little blur. Let's see. Maybe like 1.5, maybe we'll say. And then I could do that for this one as well. Same thing. Add filter, blur, 1.5, enter, kind of soften that up just a little bit. Maybe a little more would be better. But you can get an idea of how, you know, you could kind of quickly use these for other means. So now I added on the height from that, which I didn't want. I wanted this. You could have it at different, obviously, like different strengths based on different parts of the pattern. We could add some colors back in here, and we could end up turning this to, say, like silver in these areas. But hopefully it gives you another like other ideas on how you could alternatively use the pieces. It's the reason I actually made the pack the way that I did, the reason I kind of broke down and did like the masks and did all the different things, was to make it so that the pack would be versatile to be applied to other things, not just clothes. Um, I've actually been making these patterns for a while now, and I use them in all kinds of strange ways, especially within Substance Painter. I've used them to texture all sorts of different things with my own looks and my own kind of style and stuff on them. Obviously, we have the bevel on here. We could play with the bevel on these pieces and get kind of a different look going. Um, it kind of is just whatever you can kind of think up. Like, there isn't a right or wrong way to use any of this stuff. So you can see it's kind of very different at this point. Um, Now the height on the clothing does have like some little ditches and divots and stuff like that in it. It was done that way by design to add in some depth variation and stuff like that. In the case of this stuff, this kind of thing, you may not want that, so then you would come in and you would want to kind of put a blur on the height map to kind of get that back out of there. You would just kind of go through and take this off all of there and just add the blur to the height to soften it, like so. And now that's all out of there. But hopefully this gives you kind of a different idea on how the stuff can be used that maybe you might not have thought of. We're going to go ahead and turn off our new ideas folder here and turn off all this stuff, and we're going to go back to the cloth here for a minute or two. But I did want to just demonstrate that, there's other, well, to just not get your mind locked into this is for clothes. Let's put it that way. Um, Obviously, even within DS, you could use the masking to do all of those same things. You could put the mask in the height area, dial in the height very slowly, and use the tiles within DS to do the same things. You could use the masks to mask off areas to do things like play with, here, we'll do it just on this one, to play with, say, emissives. So we could turn emissives on. We could change this. We could make these areas glowing as an example. So you could use them to make, glowing elements on an axe or on armor or what have you. It's kind of just whatever you kind of can come up with. There's tons of creative uses, really. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to our red and well, now black, our black and blue and silver version. The last thing I wanted to cover is the transmaps, because obviously there are transmaps included. And if I go back to, say, this base layer, we could load in an opacity, so we could turn the opacity channel on. I could come over here to our project files. I could go down through and say, okay, you know what? I want this fabric to be sheer. And in the case of this outfit, it actually looks very, very pretty with opacity on. But so you put that on there, and now as you can see, you've got sheer fabric. It's not going to be as obvious in this view, so we're going to go to iRay here to be able to see it a little better. I find when it renders out, it's cleaner and clearer than it is in the other viewport. But so, as you can see here, now we've got like a fine sheer fabric with the design being solid. So if I zoom in, you can see these pieces are not see-through. All of these and all of these ones and these ones. It's just all the rest of the cloth that is. Obviously, at this point, you could play around with levels and things like that and bring out different details, change the sheer look of it. You could bring or use a different map to actually make the opacities. You could use the masks to build opacities. You could do all kinds of things. You could use the masks to kind of get rid of all the background cloth and just utilize like just these kind of crescents and these circles and have only those be visible and nothing else. Hopefully, though, that gives a decent breakdown of how to use it in here, how it can be used just in general in any app. And hopefully it kind of gives you a decent idea of just kind of the wide array of possibilities. Other than this, let me see here. I do want to mention that the alternative normals, there's a bunch of alternative normals. You can bring those into here and you can use them to kind of make your own cloth from scratch. So like if let's say we'll do another layer here. Well, I actually want this to be locked into here. So we're going to do this. I'm just going to turn everything else off. Actually, we're going to go under here. So we're going to leave this stuff kind of... Oops, not that one. Too many fun, exciting things now. We're going to drive this one up above. Okay, so we're going to turn this on. So we're going to say that we're here. You can drag and drop in the alternative normals and start building up your own unique cloth pieces using the patterns, and you could combine patterns using the masks, so you could come up with completely new patterns just by utilizing different pieces of the ones that I made. And so I'm going to go in here and I'm just going to grab some alternative normals. So we're going to say I'm going to grab the horizontal ones here. And let's see here, Art Collab, not that, Art Collab, texture, project, import, meow. Sorry. My cat is telling me that it is not work time, it is playtime, and this is rude. What? Meow. And then we'll bring in maybe like, maybe this one. Well, I think we'll call that a day. Meow. What do you want? What? Little boy kitten. He's very cute, but very, very ornery and persistent. So the yowling may now stay. Okay, hello. I pet you for 1 second, and then I gotta go back to what I'm doing. Okay, all done. Okay, sorry, baby talk end. Anyways, okay, so we got these brought in here, and we spent some time with the kitten. No, get down off of there. And so from here, what I could do is we have this fill layer. I could bring in, could turn off all these things, leave the roughness, leave the normal, bring in the normal, and drop it down here. Sorry, I should have moved that up a little bit. But bring in the normal, drop it there, bring in the roughness, drop it here. From there, I can, play with the scale of this. I could decide, okay, you know what, the roughness kind of isn't working for me, which in this case, it is not. On some of my cloths, I wanted the shinier. In this case, I think there might be a little too much shine. Although, could be because I didn't actually do anything with the metallicity. No, just the roughness is a little high on that one, I guess. But from here, what you can do is we can isolate the roughness layer. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to switch to roughness. up here. So now we're just looking at the roughness channel. And click over here and switch also to roughness. Kitten is just really having a conversation. And then we can do add levels and make sure that this says roughness, and just we're going to kind of take a look at it. Now the whiter, the more matte it is. So most likely I want to pump up the white on this some. We're going to try here, we're going to kind of switch it back over to material and see how that looks. Now that's better. We can kind of pull it in or out. We can change the gray and see if one way or the other. I kind of actually like it a little bit back that way. Still bring it this way a little more. Bring this maybe up this way a tinge so we have where it catches a little bit of light. And now you can see how this now looks like a different fabric than what we started with. I mean, we started with something very, very, very different than this. So you can see how pretty easily now I have kind of a different type of cloth going than what I did previous. This isn't like an ultra embroidered fancy thing anymore. It is a more softly patterned kind of cotton, almost like linen-y feel to it. But I just wanted to give an idea of what the alternative normals can do for you as well in here. So you can kind of turn anything into different types of cloth. And I tried to do a fair few. I made all the alternative normals from scratch. They're not like scans and stuff. They were actually handmade. But I did kind of a variation of kind of different cloth feels so that you could get some different looks to it. So like, I know we brought in those other normals. Let's see if we can switch out and get this to look very different here. So let's see here. Are these the horizontal ones? Okay, so I'm going to drag the horizontal one here and the horizontal one here. And we're going to back this back off. There we go. Different scale on this one. Now you can see we have a very different look going on this piece. Now it's more of a fabric similar to certain like sweater materials, and it has just a completely different feel. We could go through and kind of turn the normal, get the normals out of these shapes. We could leave them on there. That takes a little bit longer to kind of go through the process of than what I want to kind of cover on this video. But as I said, it does give you an idea of how you could quickly build up kind of your own clothing, your own fabrics, and really make this set just your own. And if we go back to base color here so I can see which things are which, like I could replicate this layer, duplicate, where are you? Click on the mask, come down here. I could bring in that third mask. We could make this very rough. Turn that down, turn this a little darker. Hopefully you can see how like now we can get a sweater from this, basically. I did put a fair bit of kind of time and thought into, you know, how do I want people to be able to use this? What do I want the abilities to be? What's going to be the most useful? I hope that at the very least this video will show that there's versatility here. And it really is just all about where your imagination can go with it. And I think from here we are going to Maybe stop. I don't know. What do I want to do? Now that was just adding that different depth to this sweater, which is kind of actually pretty. Um, I think from here, this is where we're just going to end things. I think that that is a pretty decent overview of kind of what you can do. If anyone has any questions, if there's parts of this that were maybe a little fuzzy and you were actually trying to kind of follow along or replicate my results, please let me know. I said I didn't necessarily film this to be kind of a hey, let me show you exactly how to do XYZ. I more did it to show what the possibilities are. Um, that said, though, if anybody wants to know how to do XYZ or wants to know how to do something that I did in the video, please let me know. I can always do a separate video and maybe slow that process down a little bit more or break it down or explain maybe a step that I glazed over. Um, and other than that, guess please be sure to check out our website if you haven't. It is art-collaborations.com. We've got our product listings up there, and we do have it broken down in a little different kind of fashion than Daz does, which sometimes can be easier to see what's in the packs. We have some artwork up there. We have some general articles. I don't have a ton of articles up there yet. I'm still working on that. We have this video tutorial as well as all the other ones I've done. Um, so check that out if you haven't. And other than that, I want to thank you for taking the time to watch. I hope you have a really good day, evening, night, whatever time of day it is while you're watching this. And if you haven't, please consider subscribing. And thank you. Bye.